Metropolis by Thea Von Harbou. Part 14. Little sister? Yes? I'm so hungry, sister. Hungry, echoed out of the depths. Don't you want to hear the end of my story? Yes, but sister, when you've finished, can't we go out and have dinner? Of course, as soon as my story's finished. Just think, Foxy Fox went for a walk through the beautiful flowery meadows. He had his Sunday coat on, and he held his bushy red tail bolt upright, and he was smoking his little pipe and singing all the while. Do you know what Foxy Fox sang? I am the cheerful fox, hurrah! I am the cheerful fox, hooray! And then he hopped for joy, and little Mr. Hedgehog was sitting on his hillock, and he was so glad that his radishes were coming on so nicely, and his wife was standing by the hedge, gossiping with Mrs. Mole, who had just got a new fur for the autumn. Sister. Yes? Can the water from down there be coming up after us? Why, little brother? I can hear it gurgling. Don't listen to the water, little brother. Just listen to what Mrs. Hedgehog has to chatter about. Yes, sister, but the water is chattering so loud. I think it chatters much louder than Mrs. Mole. Come away from the stupid water, little brother. Come here to me. You can't hear the water here. I can't come to you, sister. I can't move, sister. Can you come and fetch me? Me too, sister. Yes, me too. Me too. I can't do that, little brothers and sisters. Your youngest brothers and sisters are on my lap. They have gone to sleep and I mustn't wake them. Oh, sister, are we sure to get out? Why do you ask as if you were frightened, little brother? The floor is shaking so and the stones are tumbling down from the ceiling. Have those silly stones hurt you? No, but my little sister's lying down and she's not moving any more. Don't disturb her, little brother. Your sister's asleep. Yes, but she was crying just now. Don't be sorry, little brother, that she has gone where she need not cry any more. Where has she gone to then, sister? To heaven, I think. Is heaven so near then? Oh yes, quite near. I can even see the door from here. And if I'm not wrong, St. Peter is standing there in front of it with a large golden key, waiting until he can let us in. Oh, sister, sister, now the water's coming up. Now it's got hold of my feet. Now it's lifting me up. Sister, help me, sister, the water has come. God can help you, Almighty God. Sister, I'm frightened. Are you frightened of going into the lovely heaven? Is it lovely in heaven? Oh, glorious, glorious. Is Foxy Fox in heaven too and little Mr. Hedgehog? I don't know. Shall I ask St. Peter about it? Yes, sister. Are you crying? No. Why should I be crying? St. Peter! St. Peter! Did he hear? Dear God, how cold the water is. St. Peter! St. Peter! Sister, I think he answered just now. Really, little brother? Yes, somebody was calling. Yes, I heard it too. So did I! So did I! Hush, children, hush. Oh, sister, sister! Hush, please, please. Maria! Freda! Maria, are you there? Freda! Freda, here I am! Here I am, Freda! On the stairs? Yes! Why don't you come up? I can't raise the door. 10 trains have run together. I can't come to you. I must go and get help. Oh, Freda, the water is already close behind us. The water? Yes, and the walls are falling in. Are you hurt? No. Oh, Freda, if you could only force open the door wide enough for me to push the little children's bodies through. The man above her did not give her an answer. When steeling his muscles and sinews in the club of the suns, playfully wrestling with his friends, he surely never guessed that he would need them one day to force a path through ruined cables, upright pistons, and outspread wheels of fallen machines to the woman he loved. He thrust the pistons aside like human arms, clutched into steel as in soft-yielding flesh. He worked his way nearer the door and threw himself on the ground. Maria? Freda? Where are you? Why does your voice sound so far away? I want to be the last whom you save, Freda. I'm carrying the tiniest ones on my shoulders and arms. Is the water still rising? Yes. Is it rising fast or slowly? Fast! My God, I can't get the door loose. The machines are piled up on top of it like mountains. I must explode the ruins, Maria. Very well. Maria's voice sounded as though she was smiling. Meanwhile, I can finish telling my story. Freda dashed away. He did not know where his feet should carry him. He thought vaguely of God. Thy will be done, deliver us from evil, for thine is the power. From the sooty black sky, a frightful gleam of the colour of spilt blood fell upon the city, which appeared as a silhouette of tattered velvet in the painful scarcity of light. There was not a soul to be seen, and yet the air throbbed under the unbearable knife-edge of shrieks of women from the vicinity of Yoshiwara, and while the organ of the cathedral was shrilling and whistling, as though its mighty body were wounded until death, the windows of the cathedral, lighted up from within, began to phantom-like to glow. Freda staggered along to the tower house in which the heart of the great machine city of Metropolis had lived, and which it had torn open from top to bottom when racing itself to death in the fever of the 12, so that the house now looked like a ripped open gaping gate. A lump of humanity was crawling about the ruins, seeming from the sounds it emitted to be nothing but a single curse on two legs. The horror which lay over Metropolis was paradise compared with the last cruel destruction which the lump of humanity was invoking from the lowest and hottest hells upon the city and its inhabitants. He found something among the ruins, raised it to his face, recognized it, and broke into howls similar to the howls of a kicked dog. He rubbed his sobbing mouth open, the little piece of steel. May the stinking plague gnaw you, you lice! May you sit in muck up to your eyes! May you swill gas instead of water and burst every day for 10,000 years over and over again! Grot! Filth! Grot! Thank God! Grot, come here! Who's that? I'm Joe Fredison's son. Ah, Helen the devil! I wanted you! Come here, you toad! I must have you between my fists. I'd much rather have had your father, but you're a bit of him, and that's better than nothing. Come along here if you've got the guts. Ah, my lad, wouldn't I like to get hold of you? I'd like to smear you from top to toe in mustard and eat you. Do you know what your father's done? Grot! Let me finish, I tell you. Do you know what he did? He made me give up. He made me give up my machine. And once more the miserable howling of a kicked dog. My machine! My machine! That devil up there! That goddamn devil! Grot, listen to me. I won't listen to anything. Grot, in the underground city the water has broken in. Seconds of silence. Then roars of laughter, and on that heap of ruins the dance of a four-legged lump, which kicked its stumps amid wild yells, clapping its hands the whiles. That's right! Hallelujah, amen! Grot! Freda lay fast hold of the dancing lump and shook it so its teeth rattled. The water has flooded the city. The lights lie in ruins. The water has risen up the steps and opened upon the door. Upon the only door there lies tons and tons of trains which collided with each other. Let the rats drown. The children, Grot. Grot stood as if paralysed. A girl, continued Freda, clutching his hand into the man's shoulder. A girl, he said sobbingly, bending his head as if to bury it in the man's breast. A girl that has tried to save the children and is now shut in with them and can't get out. Grot began to run. We must explode the ruins, Grot. Grot stumbled, turned about and went on running, Freda behind him, closer than his shadow. But Foxy Fox knew very well that Mr. Hedgehog would come and help him out of the trap, and he wasn't a bit frightened, and waited quite cheerfully, although it was a good long time before Mr. Hedgehog, gallant Mr. Hedgehog, came back. Maria! Oh, Christ. Freda? Don't be startled, do you hear? Freda, you're not in danger. No answer. Silence. A crackling sound. Then a childish voice. And did Mr. Hedgehog come, sister? Yes. But the yes was drowned by the tearing of thousands of steel cables, the roar of tens of thousands of rocks, which were hurled up to the dome of heaven, to burst the dome and to sink, to hurtle downwards, causing the earth to sway under their fall. Supplementary crackling, grey leisurely clouds, distant rumbling and steps, childish crying, and up above the door which was hauled upwards. Maria! A blackened face bent downwards, filthy hands stretched out gropingly. Maria! Here I am, Freda. I can hardly hear you. Get the children out first, Freda. The wall's sinking. Grot came lumbering along and threw himself on the ground by Freda's side, clutching down into the pit from which the children were scrambling out, screaming. He grabbed the children by the hair, by the neck, by the head, and hauled them up as one pulls up radishes. His eyes were popping out of his head with fear. He hurled the children over his body so they tumbled over, shrieking miserably. He cursed like 100 devils. Isn't that nearly all of them? He bawled down 2 names. Father, Father, sobbed 2 little voices in the depths. The devil take you, you couple of jackanapes, roared the man. He rummaged the children aside with his fists as if he were shoveling rubbish on the dust heap. Then he gulped, snorted, clutched out, and had 2 children hanging around his neck, wet and shivering piteously, but alive, and their limbs stood more in danger of his fumbling fists than previously of the water and the tumbling stones. With the children in both arms, Grot rolled over on his side. He sat up and planted the couple before him. You goddamn pair of ragamuffins, he said amidst sobs. He wiped the tears from his eyes and sprang up, hurling the children aside like 2 little haystooks. With the furious roar of a lion, he ran to the door, from the depths of which Maria was emerging with closed eyes, supported by Freda's arm. You bloody... he howled out. He dragged Freda aside, shoved the girl back into the depths, slammed the trapdoor to, and slung his entire weight upon it, drumming the rhythm of his laughter upon it with clenched fists. A grim effort had kept Freda on his feet, but beside himself he fell upon the maniac to tug him from the trapdoor, fell over him and rolled with him in furious embrace among the ruins of the machines. Let me go, you dog, you mangy dog, howled Grot, trying to bite at the angry fist which held him. That woman murdered my machine. That damn woman led the rebel. That woman alone turned the lever to 12. I saw it when they were trampling on me. The woman can drown down there. I'm going to kill that woman. With a marvellous tension of all his muscles, Grot drew himself up and heaved himself with a jerk away from the raving man with such infuriated strength that he, Grot, shot, describing a curve amidst the children. Cursing ardently, he gathered himself up again, but though he was uninjured, he could not move a limb. He stuck an impotent spoon in a porridge of children, which adhered to his arms, legs, and fists. No steel fetters could have condemned him so effectually to helplessness, as did the little cold, wet hands which were defending her who had rescued them all. Yes, his own children were standing before him, pommelling angrily upon his clenched fists, unscared by the bloodshot eyes with which the giant glared at the dwarves, cudgelling him. "That woman murdered my machine," he howled at last, more complainingly than angrily, looking at the girl who was resting upon Freda's arms, as though expecting her to bear him out. "What does he mean?" asked Maria, "and what has happened?" And she looked with eyes, the horror in which was only modified by the deepest of exhaustion, at the destruction about, and at the snorting grot. Freda did not answer. "Come," he said, and he raised her up in his arms and carried her out. The children followed them like a flock of little lambs, and Grot had no alternative than to run along in the tracks of the tiny feet, whither the little tugging hands drew him. They had taken the children into the house, and Freda's eyes sought Maria, who was kneeling in the street among the last remaining children, consoling them and bestowing her loving smile upon weeping and bewildered eyes. Freda ran across to them and carried Maria into the house. "Don't forget," he said, letting her down upon the couch before the blazing fire in the entrance hall, and holding captive in his longing arms her half-lying, half-sitting, gently resisting form, "that death and madness and something very like destruction of the world have passed very close by us, and that, after all that has happened, I do not even know the colour of your eyes, and that you have not yet kissed me once by your own free will." "Dearest," said Maria, leaning towards him, so that her pure eyes, bathed in painless tears, were quite near to him, while at the same time a great concentrated gravity kept her lips away from his. "Are you sure that death and madness have already passed by?" "By us, beloved, yes." "And all the others?" "Are you sending me away, Maria?" he asked lovingly. She did not answer, at least not in words, but with a gesture which was at once frank and touching. She put her arms round his neck and kissed him on the mouth. "Go along," she said, stroking his bewildered face with her virginal, motherly hands. "Go to your father. That is the most hallowed way. I shall go to the children as soon as my clothes are a little drier, for I am afraid," she added with a smile which made Freda blush to his eyes, "numerous as the women are who live in the House of Suns, and willing and eager as they may be, none of them has a dress she could lend me." Freda stood bending over her with lowered eyes. The flames of the huge fire glowed upon his handsome open face, which wore an expression of shame and sadness. But when he raised his glass to meet Maria's eyes, which were silently fixed upon him, without saying a word he took her hands and pressed them against his eyelids, remaining thus for a long time. And all this while they both forgot that on the other side of the wall, which was protecting them, a city was throbbing in grisly conflict, and that amongst the ruins thousands of beings, themselves but ruins, hurled hither and thither, were losing their reason and perishing, tortured by deadly fear. The voice of the Archangel Michael coming from the cathedral recalled them to consciousness of the hour, and they parted hurriedly as if caught neglecting their duty. Maria listened to the man's retreating step. Then she turned and looked about her. What a strange sound the Michael bell had. The bell was calling so furiously, so agitatedly, as though to tumble over at every peal. Maria's heart became an echo of the bell. It fluttered in its piteous fear, which had no source other than the general vibration of terror above the town. Even the warming flames of the fire frightened her, as if they had some knowledge of the secrets of horror. She sat up and put her feet to the ground. She felt the hem of her dress. It was still rather wet, but she would go now. She took a few steps through the dimly lighted room. How brown the air was outside the windows! She hesitatingly opened the nearest door and listened. She was standing in the room in which she had stood on the day when she saw Freda for the first time, when she had led the little train of grey child spectres to those who were carefree and joyous, where she had called to Freda's heart with her gentle, "Look, these are your brothers." But of all the dearly beloved sons of boundless wealthy fathers to whom the house belonged, not one was to be seen. They must have left the tottering town long ago. Sparsely distributed candles were burning, giving the room an inward coziness and a warm air of comfort. The room was filled with tender twittering of sleepy child voices, chattering like swallows before they fly to their nests. Answering them in tones which were but a little darker came the voices of the beautifully brocaded, painted women, who had once been the playthings of the sons. Equally frightened at the thought of flight as of remaining where they were, they eventually stayed in the house of the sons, being still undecided, and Maria had brought the children to them because they could have found no better refuge, for by the beautiful and dreadful chance of all that had taken place, the troop of loving little harlots became a troop of loving little mothers, burning with a new fire in the execution of their new duties. Not far from Maria, the little drink mixer was kneeling, washing the skinny, slender-limbed body of Grot's daughter, who was standing in front of her. But the child had taken the sponge from her hand and, without saying a word, proceeded with intense gravity, was thoughtfully and untiringly washing the beautiful painted faces of the drink mixer. The girl knelt quite still, her eyes closed. Neither did she move when the child's hands began to dry her face with the rough towel. But Grot's daughter was not quite successful in this undertaking, for whenever she dried the girl's cheeks, again and again did the swift bright drops run over them, until Grot's daughter dropped the towel to look at the girl who was kneeling before her inquiringly, and not without reproach, upon which the girl caught the child in her arms, pressing her forehead to the heart of the silent creature, uttering to this heart words of love which she had never found before. Maria passed by with a soundless step. But when the door to the hall, in which no noise from the noisy Metropolis could penetrate, closed behind her, the awe voice of the angel of the cathedral struck at her breast like a fist of steel, that she stood still, stunned, raising her hand to her head. Why was St. Michael crying out so angrily and so wildly? Why was the roar of Azrael, the angel of death, joining in so alarmingly? She stepped into the street. Darkness, like a thick layer of soot, lay over the town, and only the cathedral shimmered ghost-like, a wonder of light but not of grace. The air was filled with the spectral battle of discordant voices. Howling, laughing, whistling were to be heard. It was as though a gang of murderers and robbers were passing by. In the unrecognizable depths of the street, mingled with them shrieks of women wild with excitement. Maria's eyes sought the new Tower of Babel. She had only one way in her mind, to Joe Fredison. She would go there. But she never went. For suddenly the air was a blood-red stream which poured itself forth, flickering, formed by 1,000 torches, and the torches were dancing in the hands of beings who were crowding out of Yoshiwara. The faces of the beings shone with insanity, every mouth parted in a gasp, yet the eyes which blazed above them were the bursting eyes of men choking. Each was dancing the dance of death with its own torch, whirling madly about, and the whirl of the dancers formed a train revolving in itself. "Mao-he!" flew the shrill cries above it. "Dance! Dance! Dance! Mao-he!" But the flaming procession was led by a girl. The girl was Maria, and the girl was screaming with Maria's voice, "Dance! Dance! Dance! Mao-he!" She crossed the torches like swords above her head. She swung them right and left, brandishing them so that showers of sparks fell about the way. Sometimes it seemed as if she was riding on the torches. She raised her knees to her breast with laughter which brought a moan from the dancers of the procession. But one of the dancers ran along at the girl's feet like a dog, crying incessantly, "I am Jan! I am Jan! I am the faithful Jan! Hear me at last, Maria!" But the girl struck him in the face with her sparkling torch. His clothes caught fire. He ran for some time, a living torch, along by the girl. Its voice sounded as if from the blaze. "Maria! Maria!" Then he swung himself up on the parapet of the street and hurled a streak of fire into the blackness of the depths. "Mao-hee! Mao-hee!" called the girl, shaking her torch. The procession was endless. The procession was endless. The street was already covered as far as the eye could see with circling torches. The shrieks of the dancers mixed themselves sharply and shrilly with the angry voices of the archangels of the cathedral. And behind the train, as though tugged along by invisible, unbreakable cords, there reeled a girl, the damp hem of the hose dress lashed about her ankles, whose hair was falling loose under the clawing fingers, which she pressed to her head, whose lips babbled a name in ineffectual entreaty. "Freda! Freda!" The smoke swathes from the torches hovered like the grey wings of phantom birds above the dancing train. Then the door of the cathedral was wide open. From the depths of the cathedral came the rushing of organ, there mixing itself in the fourfold tone of the archangel bells, in the rushing of the organ, in the shrieks of the dancers, an iron-trampling mighty choir. The hour of the monk Desertus had come. The monk Desertus was leading on his own. 2 by 2 walked those who were his disciples. They walked on bare feet in black cowls. They had thrown their cowls back from their shoulders. They carried the heavy scourges in both hands. They swung their heavy scourges in both hands, right and left, upon the bare shoulders. Blood trickled down from the scourged backs. The Gothics sang. They sang to the time of their feet, to the time of the scourge strokes did they sing. The monk Desertus was leading the Gothics on. The Gothics bore a black cross before them. It was so heavy that 12 men had to carry it pantingly. It swayed, held up by dark cords. And on the cross hung the monk Desertus. The black flames of the eyes and the flame-white face were fixed upon the procession of the dancers. The head was raised, the pale mouth was open. "See!" shouted the monk Desertus in a voice which all-powerfully rang out, the foretold tone of the archangel bells, the rushing of the organ, the choir of the scourge swingers, and the shrieks of the dancers. "See! Babylon the Great, the mother of abominations! Doomsday is breaking! The destruction of the world! Doomsday is breaking! The destruction of the world!" chanted the choir of his followers after him. "Dance, dance, dance, Mao-hee!" shrieked the voice of the girl leading the dancers, and she swung her torches over her shoulders and hurled them far from her. She tore her gown from her shoulders and breasts, standing, a white torch stretching up her arms, and laughing, shaking her hair. "Dance with me, Desertus! Dance with me!" Then the girl, dragging herself along at the end of the train, felt that the cord, the invisible cord on which she was hanging, snapped. She turned around and began, not knowing whither to run, only to get away, no matter where to, only to get away. The streets flashed by in a whirl. She ran and ran, down and down, and at last she saw, running along the bottom of the street and towards herself, a wild mob of people, saw too, that the men wore the blue linen uniforms, and sobbed in relief. "Brothers! Brothers!" and stretched out her arms. But a furious roar answered her. Like a collapsing wall, the mass hurled itself forward, shook itself loose, and began to tear along, roaring loudly. "There she is! There she is, the bitch who is to blame for it all! Take her! Take her!" The woman's voices shrieked, "The witch! Kill the witch! Burn her before we all drown!" And the trampling of running feet filled the dead street through which the girl fled with the din of hell broken loose. The houses flashed by in a whirl. She did not know the way in the dark. She sped on, running aimlessly in a blind horror which was the deeper for her not knowing its origin. Stones, cudgels, fragments of steel flew at her from behind. The mob roared in a voice which was no longer human. "After her! After her! She'll escape us! Quicker! Quicker!" Maria could no longer feel her feet. She did not know if she was running on stones or water. Her panting breath came through lips which stood apart as though one drowning. Up streets, down streets, a twirling dance of lights was staggering across the way far ahead of her. Far away at the end of the enormous square in which Rotvang's house also lay, the mass of the cathedral rested upon the earth, weighty and dark, yet showing a tender, reassuring shimmer, which fell through cheerful stained-glass windows and through open portal out into the darkness. Suddenly, breaking into sobs, Maria threw herself forward with her last, entirely despairing strength. She stumbled upon the cathedral steps, stumbled through the portal, perceived the odour of incense, saw little pious candles of intercession before the image of a gentle saint who was suffering smilingly, and collapsed onto the flags. She no longer saw how, at the double opening of the street which led to the cathedral, the stream of dancers from Yoshiwara coincided with the roaring stream of workmen and women, did not hear the bestial shriek of the woman at the sight of the girl who was riding along on the shoulders of a dancer, who was torn down, overtaken, captured, and stamped to earth. Did not see the short, ghastly, hopeless conflict of the men in evening dress with the men in the blue linen, nor the ridiculous fight of the half-naked women before the claws and fists of the workmen's wives. She lay down in deep oblivion, in the great mild solemnity of death, and from the depths of her unconsciousness she was not awakened even by the roaring voice of the mob, which was erecting a bonfire for the witch before the cathedral. End of part 14. If you are enjoying these audiobooks, please take the time to subscribe, press like, leave a comment, or share this channel with your friends who also enjoy listening to audiobooks. This would help this channel immensely. Thanks.